So I'm just going to put these in front of me while I'm going to be chatting for a second, because today I'm going to be making a vertical easel card. Now I have made this standard easel card, which is basically a C6 card that I have scored the front of to create, well, I trimmed it to 4 inches basically, so the card front is just 4 inches wide, so I can score straight down the middle of 2 inches because that's easier to work with in terms of measurements. And then I've created a focal point which I've just glued on half, so it's only glued on half of the front. And then I've created my stopper and put a sentiment there, and then you've still got space on the inside to write your message. So this is a standard easel card, and when the person gets it, they display it flat like that, and it would sit on the table. The card I'm going to make today is going to be actually turned on its end so that it stands like a standard card, but you still get the easel look without this sort of big sticky out focal point here. So I'm just going to go through and show you how to create that card. So I'm starting with a card base that is 11 inches long by 4 inches wide. So that is literally cutting an A4 sheet just down the middle really, but I've just taken a little smidge off, again, just to make it easier. So it's 4 inches, just to makes all your measurements for layers and everything a lot easier. 4 inches by 11. And then I've scored it on this 11-inch side at 2 3/4 and 5 1/2. And that is basically a center fold and then another center fold for the front of the card. And that's going to create our little easel. Okay, so then with this card base, I've folded and burnished all of my scores. And just an aside, when I was at class on Friday, people were asking how I fold my cards. Because when I score, and I've got like the little bump that you get from a score. So if you can see, when you make a score line, you end up with these little bumps. Well, I tend to actually fold in on the bumps. It looks a lot neater as well. So there isn't any set way. I think if you ask other people, they might do it a different way. I think people have their own preference. But just so you know, that's how I do it. Right, so I've got my card base. I'm going to layer. So I've got 2 pieces of black card, and my layers are 2 1/2 by 3 3/4. Okay, so that's 2 1/2 by 3 3/4, and I've got 2 pieces, and I'm going to glue those onto the card front. So just stick those. And this is actually quite a simple card to make, I think, because you're literally just taking a normal card base and just doing a fold, oops, which I think isn't too tricky. So we're going to just center both of these pieces of black card, or whatever card you have got, into that half of the card, and I'm going to then do this other one on the other side. Again, I'm going to center it in the space, but I'm going to be conscious that I need to make sure that I do it nice and neat so that it runs nicely along, and I don't have one sort of up there and the other one, you know, slightly off askew. So I'm going to try my best to make it straight. Okay, so I'm just going to center that on that side. To make the focal point work, if I show you, I've got some die cut pieces here, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment on the front of this, and then that's going to be layered on here. But to do it properly, so that the card will be able to open like a triangle still, like a little tent, and this is going to be flat, I'm going to use 2 circles that I have scored in half or folded in half. Now you could use squares, they don't have to be circles, it's just that that was easiest for me just to punch out. But if you don't have a circle punch, you could just cut out 2 small squares, I think roughly about 1 1/4 inches So if you cut a square 1.25 inches and then just scored it or folded it in half, you would be able to do exactly the same thing that I'm doing. It's just to create a little hinge to attach your focal point to. So this is for my die cuts to attach to. But the reason I'm telling you about it now is I think I'm going to try actually sticking it in now and then putting my paper in so that it kind of gets covered up. And then I'll just have two little flaps kind of sticking out rather than you seeing that kind of big kind of half circle on there. So that's why I'm kind of telling you about it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just glue half of this circle, and I am just going to line it up with the edge of my black card and just kind of eyeball it so it's in the middle. So just pop that down there, and I'm just going to stick it there, and I'm going to do the same with the other side. Just make sure you've got it the right way around for sticking it down, and you should just end up with two little flappy bits. And the flaps are, I'm sorry, it's black card, so probably if I show you on a piece of white card like this, your flaps are stuck so that they are closed edge pointing to each other, so that you end up with flaps, little flaps sticking outwards. So it's closed edges that are getting glued. So it's a closed edge that's facing each other rather than that way around. Okay, it's the closed edge. Sorry, I just realized that it was on the black card and it was probably very difficult to see. So if I hold this upwards, you can see I've got these two little hinges now sticking out. Okay, poor choice of color, I'm afraid, sorry. So now I can layer my paper on top, and that covers most of that hinge up. That was why I wanted to tell you about that first. So these paper layers now, if I just bring my measurements back in, the paper layers are 2 1/4 by 3 1/2. So I'm just going to glue those down now. Okay, and I'll just stick that in there, and I just need to center it just like you would normally. Just get that nicely centered. Right, so I'll do that side, and then I'm going to do the other side. So as I say, you could just use two little squares of card and just fold them in half, and they will work equally as well. Okay. So there we have our little hinge. If I stand it up so you can see like that, my little sort of butterfly hinge is just sticking out there, and my easel works like this. And you can kind of get an idea now of how this is going to go together. Okay, because what's going to happen is my die cut layer is going to get stuck now onto those little butterflies. Okay, so I'm going to just glue my base die on here. So I just come in and just stick that. And there you go, that's your die cut, able to stay flat even when it is standing upwards. It doesn't stick out because you've created this little mechanism behind. Okay, so I'm gonna stamp now, and this die cut I've used is from the Hippo Dies. And I know I talk about these Hippo Dies all the time because I know whenever you say hippos, they actually go with this little hippo stamp set, but the dies are all basically beautiful stitched shapes. And obviously you do have the hippo and the little unicorn and things here, but I love it for the shapes. And the shapes I'm using today are these ones here, which are really pretty. So I'm going to stamp this. Just wanted to send some happy thoughts your way, which I really love. onto a pre-cut die cut that I've already die cut out. So I'm just going to stamp this down. Okay, and then I will just be popping that just flat, glued flat to the card front. But as I say, you could make a little mechanism. If you don't have a circle punch, you could make a little mechanism exactly the same way, just using a little square. I'll show you that in a second. So that's the front. Let me just grab a bit of scrap white to show you what I mean about doing a mechanism with a square. So if I start with just a scrap piece of paper here, if I just cut it, say 1.5. I just get that. So 2 little squares that are 1.5 by 1.5, and if I just fold those over just in half, and I fold that over in half. Okay, and depending on what size your focal point is, I'd probably have to, because that's quite big, I'd probably just trim those a little bit. So I'm just going to take a little smidge off each one of those. But this is kind of similar to what we did whenever we made our, I don't know if you remember when we did the like triple cube card, we kind of created little hinges. So you could make exactly the same thing with square hinges. Okay, so just, if you don't have a circle punch, just make 2 little hinges, and you could even just angle the front. So I could just do a little tab kind of cut just to angle that front piece, just so there's not a big, chunk of card, and it'll probably sit better as well if it's just slightly angled like so. And there's your 2 hinges. Okay, so that's just made out of cutting 2 squares, and then you just glue your card front to the little tabs. Okay, and sorry, it would go that way, wouldn't it? So they would go together like that, and then your little flaps would, your focal point would attach to those little flaps. Let's move on to our stopper now. So that's my card front done, and I'm going to do inside the card. So as I said, I've cut this nice copper card that I just happened to have, and I thought, well, that's nice. So I'm going to put that on the inside of this. As I say, I was sorting out some boxes and I found a load of card bits in that, and I was just sorting them all out into kind of bags of colour so that I can start using them up. And when I was making this card today, I thought, oh, I'm sure I came across a nice bit of copper card, which will just go perfect. So I'm just going to pop that in, and then I'll have a piece of white just to write a message on. So I've just cut a layer that is 3 by 3.5 basically to go on the inside to write your message. And if you wanted to, of course, as I do normally, bring the outside of the card in. So I could just have a little strip of card just going up the edge of this piece. So I'll just stick a line of glue down there. And this is those lovely Simply Elegant papers, which are stunning. So I'll just pop that down like that. Oops, Daisy, it's lurched out there. And then just come in and just trim that. And then I can just glue that in there. and then it's somewhere nice for your message. Sorry, I've got inky fingers all over this card now. So I shall pop that just centered on this side, like so. And I don't want to go the full width ahead. Sorry, I've just done a big inky finger there. I don't want to go the full width of the card because you're obviously going to have an easel style, and that means that this is going to come up and stand proud. So I've just put my message bit in part way of the card. And then I've created this little die cut here, which is just a plain black die cut, and then I've die cut the lovely paper out, and that's going to be my little stopper here. So I'm going to actually just, and the reason why I put it on card and not just kept the paper is obviously the stopper has to hold the whole card front. So it's just to make it sturdy. So I shall just pop that down on there. And I want this to stand quite proud, so I'm going to just use my adhesive strips because I know they're quite deep. They're quite deep in comparison to normal foam pads. And I need this to be slightly more proud because it's going to be the stopper. And I want the card to be able to go against it and not sort of flop past it. So I'm just using my adhesive strip rather than standard foam pads. So if you're using standard foam pads, double them up, I would say, unless they're quite thick already. And then I'm just going to stand up and have a look about where I'd like this to kind of be. Oops, it's not really centered. That's probably better. Oh. So I'm going to just pop my stopper roughly in the middle, and I'm probably about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge. Okay, and there you go. That is a vertical easel, and when the person gets it, it just stands up like that. And the good thing is this little mechanism that you've created the focal point on just supports that. So as you see in the normal standard easel card, it would be sticking up, but with that little mechanism, it goes flat with the card going flat, and then it raises outwards nicely when the card stands up. So I thought that was really pretty.